Recently I've just fancied delving into the world of IBM PC compatibles that I've got lying about. Nothing new there, but specifically the wonderful world of 286s and the hardware that surrounded them. Shout out to SqSp for sponsoring, more on that later. There's nothing like an underdog to whet the senses. Machines which on the face of it aren't very exciting at all, but that's exactly what makes them so much more compelling. These are machines which were on the cusp of a new era of gaming, machines which were at one point the only affordable way to get into PCs, and which featured all sorts of quirks and weirdness that you would only get from a platform that was trying to define itself. Plus, you'll never guess what I found on this particular machine. It blew my mind. 286s were weird, they felt modern yet dated, they were fast yet cumbersome. They were kind of like the Palm Pilot of the desktop world, breaking new ground but in a way that felt half-finished, but that wasn't just because of the CPU, it was due to the wider hardware that knitted with the processor. First introduced by Intel in February 1982 and intended for industrial automation and telecommunications systems, the 286 introduced many features not found on earlier chips, including non-multiplexed address and data buses featuring 4 independent units for address, bus instruction and execution, alongside all-important protection mode and memory management capabilities, something we usually only associate with 386s. But these features weren't designed with PCs in mind, so the interfacing was sometimes a bit clunky. IBM would first utilise the chip in their PC-AT during 1984, where it became the industry standard until the early 90s, offering up to a 100% improvement over 8086 processors per clock cycle. Although the first chips were clocked between 4 to 8 MHz, later releases by AMD pushed that up to a whopping 25 MHz. In this box I have an Epson Apex 200/40 featuring one of the later 286 processors clocked at 12 MHz. And I'm going to continue switching between calling it a 286 and 286 because I've been tainted by America. But look at this box, it's absolute perfection. We've got that sexy looking PC over on the right, and down the left a list of specifications. It's more than any man could ask for. This baby packs 640 kilobytes of RAM, expandable up to 15.5 megabytes thanks to the 286's 16 megabytes of physical address space. It's got a multi-mode graphics adapter, 40 megabytes of hard drive space, which is approximately 20,000 pages of documents. I mean, who the hell is going to need more than that? Plus, we've got a 5¼ inch floppy, support for further drives, MS-DOS 3.3 included in the box. You know, it's incredible. But what you'll notice, like all PCs from this era, is that it's very business focused. This is a productivity centre, it's not a gaming centre, because frankly, who was going to spend over $1,500 on a gaming machine in 1989? No one. That would be nuts, especially as most games were on other platforms. Alright, this isn't an ASMR cleaning video, don't get excited, there's plenty of channels you can find that stuff on. This is just wiping the keyboard quickly because it's a bit dirty, alright? Now, I don't have the sought after Epson colour monitor because instead this model came with this Philips Professional monochrome display, which still complements it pretty perfectly. On the rear of the Epson we've got a 9-pin TTL connector, standing for transistor-transistor logic, effectively a digital output consistent with an MDA graphics output, which sits next to a joystick port on expansion slot 1, and it's got a handy switch to flick between colour and monochrome. Over on the left we've got a serial and parallel port, and the keyboard DIN connector plugs into the front as it did on a few machines from this era, although this one has a nice cubby hole to hide it away. Look at that, it flips out and everything, it's great. There's also a compartment for CPU speed, reset and another monitor select button, which they both have to be flicked to make sure everything's working properly. Alright, let's connect the power and fire this baby up. Pretty standard dead battery and disk failure here, The disk is actually fine, it's just not configured in the BIOS as the battery is dead. Here we are, beautiful DOS 3.3, all the body needs. Rather than having a built-in BIOS setup utility, this Epson has a setup program stored on the hard drive. A little cumbersome and problematic if the drive fails, but as we can see, it's got a built-in 287 maths coprocessor. Pretty extravagant. We're currently running in 80-column monochrome mode, and our 3.5-inch floppy drive hasn't been detected, so we'll have to sort that in a bit. Now, like a lot of computers I pick up, this one hasn't been wiped, but it's very clear that it has been used for business use as expected. We've got a range of utilities and productivity programs on here. What I definitely wasn't expecting was to find one particular piece of software, the chances of which seem absolutely mind-boggling, which I'll get onto in a minute. But first, let's talk about Squarespace, the easiest way to get a website up and running in 2024. You can pick from so many styles and use Blueprint AI to get the best layout and style options, along with optimized SEO tools so that you can show up in Google for the keywords that matter. It's just easy to snap features in and out, but one of my favourite abilities is to swap between mobile and desktop views so that you can optimize your content for every device and make sure it looks great. Just head to Squarespace for a free trial, and when you're ready, go to squarespace.com/nostalgianerd to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Yes, this is a business PC. It was advertised as a business PC, it looks like a business PC, it's a business PC. It's not geared up for gaming at all, despite the gaming joystick adapter on the back. I mean, for starters, we've got this monochrome monitor, and although it's linked up to a multi-graphics adapter, it's effectively running in MDA mode at the moment, which isn't as psychedelic as it sounds. But just look at that orange glowing phosphor display. Oh, I adore it. So crisp, so energetic, so warming to the soul. It feels like Christmas Day in a screen. But this business aspect is exactly what led to thousands of us having 286 machines in the 90s, especially in the UK. You see, America was a bit ahead of us in terms of PC usage. Over there, businesses jumped onto the IBM PC compatible bandwagon quicker than you can say Yankee Doodle. But over here, we had BBC Micros running Stocktakes, Amstrads, even Sinclairs. The same brands that were taking up space in our living rooms running games were doing our education and small business tasks because they were cheaper. And it was really only the second-hand market and stock clearances which got PCs into small businesses and our homes. Because when big business decided to upgrade their fleets of machines, their old computers would end up in newspapers or retailers who specialised in refurbished stock. A £200 286 was certainly preferable to forking out a couple of grand for the latest 486 machine. That includes machines like this Epson, or even massive bulky beasts like this Tandon. You can just see from the stickers on the front that this has been in prime business use. I just love the size and case variations of these early machines too. You could have something fairly compact or something the size of your local fish and chip shop just sitting on your desk horizontally. But this ultimately meant that during the early to mid 90s, if you had enough space on your little corner lounge desk, households could finally jump on the PC bandwagon, just a little behind the curve. Sure, the reasoning might have been for homework, for accounting, for education, but we knew what we wanted. We wanted Doom. Unfortunately, Doom wouldn't be ported to the 286 until 2023, and even then it's not Doom as we know it. I'll make a proper video about this in due course because we need to talk about it. Ultimately, the 286 couldn't do Doom, but it could do other things, and that was good enough. In the same way that owning a Fiat wasn't the same as owning a Ferrari, but it was good enough? Kinda? Depending on your graphics card, at least. The twin-head MGA card in this Epson is a variant of their Magic Combo card released in 1987 that gives us MDA and Hercules monochrome compatibility, along with colour CGA compatibility should you be lucky enough to have a compatible RGB monitor. And whilst I've got this case off, just absolutely check out how clean it is in here. Look how utterly shiny that AMD 286 is. Beautiful! Looks like someone has replaced the battery with a couple of coin cells at some point, which also needs changing. Another reason I've taken this lid off though is to sort out that 3.5-inch floppy drive. Turned out to just be a loose power connector pin. And there we go, job done. We now have an A drive and a B drive. But I'm just going to keep coming back to that display, because the 80-column text this screen shows is frankly beautiful. It may only be text, but it just looks so vivid and crisp. Games like this Star Trek tactical ship simulation may look basic, but it also feels so cozy. You know, it feels like we're righting the wrongs of the world with this text-driven tactical display. Knights of Legend looks incredible, absolutely drenched with visual style. Look at it. I feel like I'm in that lightning somehow. I don't know how, but you can feel it in your soul. If we connect up an RGB monitor and flip over to CGA mode, it just doesn't have the same impact, right? Sure, we've got a dash of colour, but it's not amber Hercules colour. And although not all games will work in Hercules mode, in fact most won't, it just feels so compellingly different when they do that you're just drawn in. It's like those vacuum fluorescent displays on old tabletop games. They always felt more engaging than the LCD screens which replaced them. If we flip back into CGA mode, which by the way doesn't work with all CGA games, this graphics card is incredibly selective. We can play games like Golden Axe. I mean, just about. Games which were converted to the PC at this time weren't always the best conversions. I mean, if you wanted a decent gaming machine, an Amiga, Atari ST or one of those fancy Mega Drives would be the way to go. But a PC had a certain status, and that really started hitting home with FPS games in the 90s. And I guess that's my point here. That's the point I want to make about the 286 and its associated hardware. Is a point I've often made in videos of the past. By the time these machines got into households, developers were making games for 386s, 486s, even Pentiums, but these old beavers were far from dead. Sometimes the limitations of a machine are its greatest strength. Sometimes you need that anchor to really get the juices flowing and to make things exciting. It's half the reason people are still developing for old machines, old operating systems, and machines like the Spectrum Next. There are, of course, more powerful machines available, but working within limitations always brings out the best in us. It compels us to be creative and to overcome, something that we as humans can be good at. Whether outside or inside of ourselves, limitations are sometimes our greatest strengths, the very foundation that drives us. Modern games with fancy graphics are great, but sometimes you just need an orange DOS prompt, a text adventure, and a dark room to make everything right with the world. And talking about making everything right again brings me back onto that piece of software that I found nestled on the hard drive. My video before last was about the Michelangelo virus, about how the world lost their minds when the threat of what could happen started escalating, to the extent that some companies such as Symantec launched their own specific Michelangelo versions of antivirus. People could download these versions for free and use them to disinfect their fears. I've never seen software like this in the wild because it's quite rare, but what should be on this very machine? Yes, it's the Michelangelo version of Norton Antivirus. What an absolute coincidence that this bit of software is one of the few utilities installed on the hard drive. Look at the dates there. I can't believe it. What are the chances? This machine must have been right at the centre of the fiasco right back in 1992, and it looks like it hasn't really been used much since. Completely unexpected, but very cool, and very cool to see this bit of history in action, pretending to look for other viruses when in fact it doesn't. This little scan was intentionally put in to make it look like it was doing something so people thought something was happening, because the actual scan for the Michelangelo virus takes, seconds. So it just kind of searches around for files for a bit. It's quite funny, really. We've got all these readme files and added bits of text, sales pitches, encouraging you to buy the full version of the program. I mean, nothing sells like fear, hey guys? Anyway, I just fancied having a look at this Epson and diving into the world of the 286 and orange phosphor, which I guess I've now done. So I hope you enjoyed this little adventure. Until next time, I've been Nostalgia Nerd. Toodaloo.